Okay, these two videos, percentages and proportions, are going to be the last two videos of this unit, and then we'll start getting ready for our first unit test. And these two topics, percentages and proportions, are two topics where I will allow you to use a calculator. So if you have one handy, you might want to pause the video and go grab it. It might help you with some of the examples. And you definitely want to bring your calculator to class if you have one from now on. If you don't have one, I'll have one in the classroom that you can use. So this video is percentages. We're going to talk about how to convert percentages to fractions and decimals, and we're also going to talk about how to calculate a percentage. So let's start with converting a percent to a fraction. It's pretty simple. There's kind of two steps. The first thing you're going to do is divide by 100. So you'll write the percentage, whatever percentage you're given, over 100, and then reduce to lowest terms, which we learned about last week. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So these are down towards the bottom of your notes page. You have to skip over the decimals piece for now, and then we'll go back. So if we were going to convert these percents into fractions, we just write each one over 100. So 25%, that's the same as 25 over 100. And then you reduce that to lowest terms. So reducing to lowest terms, a quick review, you're dividing by the biggest thing that goes into the numerator and the denominator. So in this case, you're dividing by 25. So you divide the numerator and denominator by 25, you get 1/4, and that would be the fraction form of 25%. 3% as a fraction, you write 3 over 100, and that cannot be reduced, so that's the final answer. 240%, that's larger than 1, so you're going to have a fraction whose numerator is larger than the denominator, and that's okay. It would be 240 over 100. Try to reduce that to lowest terms. If you do, you get 12 over 5. And 0.61% is going to look a little funny at first. You would write 0.61 over 100, so following that first step, but then we're not really reducing to lowest terms here. We're actually going to multiply by something so that we don't have a decimal in the numerator. So what I'm really doing is moving the decimal point to the right twice, because then I'll have 61 in my numerator. So if I move the decimal point to the right twice in my denominator, I get 10,000. So the fraction form of 0.61% would be 61 over 10,000. Okay, if we go back up, I gave you space to write the two steps that it takes to write a percent as a decimal. And the first step is write it as a fraction. So if you want to go from percent to decimal, you're going to go kind of through writing it as a fraction first. And then from there, you just divide the numerator by the denominator. So this is where a calculator will come in handy. Let's go back to those examples. You already have the fraction forms written in. So if you use your calculator and you type 1 divided by 4, you'll see that's in decimal form 0.25. You have to be careful that you're typing in 1 divided by 4 and not 1 over 4. Those buttons are a little different on the calculator, so if you're not sure how to do that, I can show you in class. With 3 over 100, you type that in the calculator and you would get 0.03. Why don't you pause the video for a minute here, try the next two, and then I'll show you the answers. 12 over 5, when you divide, you get 2.4. And 61 over 10,000, when you divide, you get 0.0061. Now, if you look, there's a little bit of a pattern forming here. You want to look at the original percentage that you were given and compare it with the decimal, and you might find a quicker way of changing percents into decimals. If you see that quick way of doing it, you can do that every time. You don't have to write out the fraction in between. So this next piece of the notes is how to find a percent. And some of you have been taught ways of doing this already. I like to do this by what I call decoding. So I'll show you my version. If you like it, you can use it. If you know a different way that you like better, we can talk about that as well. There are kind of three key words that we usually come across when we are talking about percents. The word what is often in the sentence, and when you see the word what, that's the question it's asking you, that's what it wants you to figure out. So you put a variable there. I always use the variable p for percent, but you can use any variable. The word is, we already know, means equals, and the word of means multiply. So those are words that you're going to see a lot when you need to calculate percents. For example, if I asked you, what is 75% of 120? When I see the word what, I use a variable. When I see the word is, I use an equal sign. 75%, I'm going to write that as in its decimal form. You always want to write the percentage in decimal form because when you multiply, a decimal is something that you can put into your calculator. It's something that you could even multiply out by hand. So instead of 75%, I'm going to write 0.75 because that's the decimal form. Of means multiply. 120, I just carry that down. And so now here, I want to know what is 75% of 120. I can calculate that by just evaluating this expression, multiplying 0.75 times 120. And if you go ahead and do that, you see the right-hand side simplifies to 90. So 90 is 75% of 120. Here's a second example. I want you to pause the video and translate this into an algebraic expression, and then come back and we'll talk about how to solve it. See if you translated yours the same way that I did mine. Just bring down the 15 is what percent. This time we don't know the percentage, so we're going to put p there, of 75. Now if you put in a little percentage symbol here, that's fine. It won't hurt anything, but it's not necessary. You don't need it. So if you see what or what percent, you can put p in its place. This one isn't as easy to solve as the last one because the last one had p by itself on one side of the equation. So you might remember from a pre-algebra class or an 8th grade math that you need to get p by itself here, and the way to do that is divide by 75. This is a multiplication symbol, but to get p by itself, we have to do the opposite of multiply, so we'll divide by 75. So if I divide both sides by 75, divide 15 divided by 75, I get 0.2. And give that a try so you see what I mean. 15 divided by 75 is 0.2. And that's the decimal form, but we want to know what the percent is. So going the opposite way from decimal to percent, that's the same as 20%. Here's one final example. I want you to work on this example by yourself. Get to an answer that you feel comfortable with, and we'll talk about it during class tomorrow.